Good morning, hope you're having a great day. So, one of the most troubling people in the entire Bible who are constantly instigating fights and causing tremendous trouble to Moses and Aaron, and it spreads through all the way from the book of Exodus into the book of Numbers, is two people actually, Dasan and Aviram. Dasan and Aviram were two rabble-rousers, as we would call them. 5 times they caused a rebellion against Moses and Aaron. The first time they scream at Moses and Aaron, "Why are you telling Pharaoh to let the Jews go out of Egypt?" The second time, when Moses and Aaron watched them fighting and say, "Why are two Jews fighting with each other?" They tell Moses, "Oh, we watched what you did when you killed that Egyptian." And they go tell Pharaoh. The third time is, of course, when Moses tells the Jews not to leave manna over for the next day. And they leave it over and try to spread it out on Shabbat morning so the Jews should think that Moses is wrong. The fourth time is in the story of the spies. When they tell Moses, "We won't go up to the land of Israel, we don't want to go." But the fifth, and maybe the most dramatic, is in the story of Korach. The story we just read about Korach, who rebels against Moses and Aaron together with On ben Pelet and Dasan and Aviram. And at the middle of the portion, Moses pleads with Dasan and Aviram, and he says, "Dasan and Aviram, come, have a conversation with me. Please come speak to me." And Dasan and Aviram says, "No way. Even if you blind our eyes, you took us from a land of milk and honey." They call the land of Egypt the land of milk and honey. "And you took us to die in the desert? Even if you blind our eyes, lo nala, we will not go up." You know, everything in Torah has a very detailed nuance, which has a very important message. And the rabbi is asking a question. It says that Moses called Dasan and Aviram B'nai Eliav, the children of Eliav. And the question is, why the detail that they were the sons of Eliav? We already know it in the lineage. In fact, it doesn't say Moses here, the son of Aaron. It just says Moses called Dasan and Aviram. So why does it have to tell us that they were the sons of Eliav? And also, what does it mean? They said, even if you blind our eyes, we won't go up. What's the message here? And the Abder Rav, in one of the most profound messages, says something so beautiful, which tells us about the character of Moses and connects to the Rebbe's yahrzeit, which we just commemorated on Sunday. The Abder Rav says, you see, you got to understand the nuance. When Moshe calls Dasan and Aviram the sons of Eliav, by saying the sons of Eliav, he's telling us what Moses was trying to tell them. Moses was telling these rabble-rousers who constantly instigated and rebelled against Moshe and Aaron and against God. They were the worst of the worst, pessimist, negative, angry, divisive. But Moshe, when he wants to call them up and plead with them one last time, he says, "Remember, you are B'nai Eliav. You are the children of Eliav. Your father, the father of the two of you, was a tzaddik. He was righteous. Remember where you come from. Don't let this part of you that wants to have fights, that wants to argue, that wants to be divisive, that wants to overthrow Moses and Aaron, don't let it get the best of you." And also the word Eliav means Eliav, God is my father. Moshe was pleading with them. He was trying to take these people with so much challenges and so much fighting and tell them, lift yourself up, see where you come from. See that at the end of the day, you are the children of God. See at the end of the day that your father was righteous. And maybe he hoped that this would lift them up to maybe repent. You see, Moses was the ultimate leader who never gave up on another soul. Even Dasan and Aviram didn't get worse than them. But yet Moshe looks at them and says, "Remember, Dasan and Aviram, that you are B'nai Eliav." And what do they answer him? "Ha'enei Elikima, even if you blind our eyes, lo nala, we won't go up. Our eyes are blind. We don't want to see the truth. We don't want to hear this spiritual part. Lo nala, we won't go up." They didn't say we won't have a conversation. They said we won't go up. We won't become more elevated, more spiritual, like B'nai Eliav. The story of Moses repeated itself in this generation in the greatest way, with our dear Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, a blessed memory, who never gave up on another Jew. never gave up on the infinite soul and inherent kindness and goodness we have. He never gave up on a human being, on their potential to change their trajectory to goodness, to kindness, and that ultimately to see that inherently and deep down, every human being is good, is kind, and it's just about revealing it. I heard this fascinating story from my colleague and dear friend, Rabbi Levi Wolf, who heard it from Rabbi Shlomo Biederman, who was the head of Tel Aviv University. And it's a story about Gershon's Shapron, or Sopron as he was called later, who was born in the 1920s in Europe and had a very good, beautiful Jewish education. But later he was taken to Auschwitz in 1944 from Hungary, where after the war, when he finally survived, he realized that he was the only one, the only member of his entire family who survived. Gershon became angry at God, angry at Judaism. How could this happen? And he ended up going to Oxford University, where he studied philosophy and then became a professor in Dublin, Ireland. Then he moved to Australia and eventually became the head of philosophy at Tel Aviv University. But throughout this all, he was angry at God. He was angry at Judaism for what has happened. And he used his knowledge to take select verses and ideas of Judaism and to show how Judaism was a theocracy only for the wealthy and had no moral values and no kindness for the indigent, etc., etc. He even wrote a book that was written in Hebrew and English about this. And one day, he wrote a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, a letter full of anger, a letter full of upsetness at the Lubavitcher Rebbe for bringing Jews closer to Judaism and for inspiring them with the Torah. And he wrote a real harsh letter to the Rebbe. And a little while later, he got a response for the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's handwritten note. The Rebbe first refers to him in the plural in a respectful way. And the Rebbe doesn't answer him on anything he says. The Rebbe just tells him that, recognizing his last name, Shapron, or Sopron as he called it, there were two very famous families. One from Lithuania that produced some of the greatest Torah scholars, preeminent Torah scholars. And there was one from Hungary, a very famous Hasidic family, full of spiritual mystics that had the same name. And the Rebbe said, I'm wondering, from which family do you come from? Are you from the Lithuanian family? Or are you from the Hasidic family in Hungary? Years later in Tel Aviv, as he was about ready to pass away from cancer at 68, he called in Rabbi Biederman and he showed him this letter from the Rebbe from years earlier. And with tears in his eyes, he says, do you realize what the Rebbe tried to do here? Do you realize what the Rebbe tried to do with me and my anger and my disconnection from Judaism? Instead of answering me and getting into discussion, which might have never helped, he tried to lift me. He tried to remind me of who I am and the families I come from, the dynasty, if it's Lithuanian or Hasidic, of scholars, of spiritual people, of mystics, of great rabbis. And the Rebbe tried to remind me that I have a heritage of 4,000 years, just like Moses tried to tell Dasan and Aviram that you are Bnei Eliyav. You come from the righteous man Eliyav, and also remember that God is your family. Same thing the Rebbe tried to do with me. In the age of genetics, we always try to say that many of the traumas and emotions and difficulties and struggles we have come from the DNA of our parents. And yes, that might be true, but also the holiness, the spirituality, the kindness, the love, the faith, the deep faith we get also is in our DNA from our parents. 4,000 years of history, and that's what the Rebbe tried to tell this professor, Gershon. The same thing that Moses, thousands of years earlier, told the Dasan and Aviram. But the story doesn't end here. When Rabbi Wolf said this story on a video, it ended up getting to another rabbi in Australia, and he said, wait, I have someone with the same surname who lives in my community. Let me find out if he's related to this Gershon. What a remarkable story. So he reaches out to this guy in his community, and he finds out that actually this man was the son of Gershon. And the man tells him his story, how he was going through a hard divorce and he moved to Australia where he found this lovely Jewish girl he was going to marry. But then, when they were about to get married, he found out that his father had married a Gentile and that he himself wasn't Jewish. And he had to go through a hard conversion and go through disappointment, finding out that he wasn't a Jew. And later he converted and he married this girl, but he was angry at his father. And he said that for 26 years or 28 years, this was 2018, he hadn't said Yizkor for his father out of anger. And then for a moment he stopped and he realized, just 1 second, maybe the Rebbe's letter to my father was also intended to me, to tell me that I come from Yichis, I come from a lineage, that yes, it might be from my father's side, but that my grandfather and great-grandfather were all righteous scholars, mystics, and teachers. And that I am a child of God. And that year, for the first time, he went to shul, 26 or 28 years after his father's passing. And he said Yizkor for his father. That's what the Rebbe was. The Rebbe was the leader of our generation, who instilled within us the idea that each and every one of us has a divine, godly soul, and that we come from a place of holiness, and that we are embedded with the DNA of God and the DNA of thousands of years of Jewish teachers and mystics and patriarchs and matriarchs who gave their life for faith and who instilled within us this love for Judaism. And that's what the Rebbe tried to do with every Jew throughout the far-flung world and every human being, to find and to teach them and to reach out to them. And instead of scolding them or getting into an argument with them about theology, as Gershon wanted a response from the Rebbe just tried to lift him up, as Moses did with Dasan and Aviram. What did Moshe say? B'nei Eliyav. Instead of arguing with them, he tried to lift them above their quarrel, above their anger, above the part of them that was pulling them away. May Hashem give us that we, as disciples of the Rebbe, and as disciples, of course, of Moses, the first greatest leader, that we should learn from this. And in our conversations, in our arguments, if we see someone's angry, someone's disconnected from his faith, have the patience, and instead of arguing with them, lift them up to greater heights, to love, to Judaism, to faith, to godliness. God bless you and have a great day.